Welcome to MMA XL Radio with Karsten and Chase. Joining us today is President and CEO of Round 5 Collectibles, Mr. Damon Lau. Glad to have you with us, Damon.
Yeah, great being on the show, guys. Appreciate you having me.
Hey, not a problem. Listen, man, you've been handling your business on the collectibles end, and we just want to ask you a quick question because, people always get this misconception about collectibles or action figures, or they call them dolls. Exactly, what's the official name? Is it action figures or collectibles?
Well, we're probably a lot more in the collectible range. Action figures usually refer to, a type of toy that has lots of points of articulation. Ours are more so, I guess you say, like for display and things of that sort. So collectibles is probably a better definition.
Well, all right, then finally we can put that question to rest. It is officially collectibles. Now, what's it been like working with the fighters one-on-one?
To be honest, the experience has been, that's probably been one of the best parts of the job, I'd say. I think working with the fighters on a very personal basis, and, I think what you do realize, a lot of these guys are human, and they're just like guys like you and me, and it just so happens that they have the opportunity to work hard and get a chance to do something great. And I think it's really interesting to see how much the sport's grown in the past few years, and people now really start taking a look at their accomplishments and appreciating them for it. So I think it's fantastic talking to all these guys, and you realize everyone's from different walks of life. You have guys who are from the East Coast, guys who are homegrown from New Jersey, guys from Canada, and I think everyone sort of comes from their own walk of life. But I think that's sort of been the coolest part of the project, is just sort of realizing that every other guy that you're meeting, every other guy that you're working with, once you sort of peel off a couple of layers of the onion, you realize they're just like you.
Right. Hey, I got one question on that. What type of benefits are the fighters getting from this? Because, we know that, fighters in the UFC, fighters in Strikeforce, these guys are getting paid their normal contracts, but is there something like they're getting from Round 5 that's coming into them?
The fighters actually... The most important thing with this company when we started with is to make sure that we created a program that made sense for the fighters and the athletes. So they actually get a royalty on every single unit that's sold. So every unit sold, a portion of the profits of that figure actually end up going to the individual fighter, which is why I think on a couple different notes, why they sort of have almost an invested interest. I like to call the fighters a partner in our company. Even though they're a small partner depending on what SKU, they take part in the creation of the collectible. They get proceeds and benefits from the actual sales of it. They help market it. They actually help get involved in the creative side too as well. So they see royalties on every single figure being sold.
Nice. Now, a quick question. Now, I do this thing online, the MMA analyst. I'm not as big as like maybe Fedor or Randy, but I'm a good-sized heavyweight. What would it take for me, to get my own collectible with Round 5?
A couple wins, a lot of fans, and and a proven track record. Probably that'd be your best bet.
I don't know if that's gonna happen. Damn. How did you actually get into collectibles and mixed martial arts?
Well, I've been a diehard fan for probably a good solid 10 years. So, just like everyone else who you talk to who's watched the sport, I watch UFC 1 and 2 and all their initial versions, but I really sort of got back into it in 1999. And I was that, quintessential hardcore fan. Like, I don't watch too much hockey, I don't watch any baseball, I don't watch football. I just watch MMA, and I was the guy who'd sit on Sherdog late at night because I couldn't find Pride on DirecTV, so I'd read the play-by-plays on Sherdog late at night, and I really was that die-hard fan. And being a fan for so many years, my actual background, I own a mid-sized advertising agency here up in Toronto, Canada, and I had the opportunity to work with a lot of different athletes just because of the creative advertising side, and one of them ended up being Randy Couture. So me and Randy had met through a couple business contacts and actually became pretty good friends. And eventually, one night, it's probably around 2 years ago, me and him were having dinner, and we were just hanging out, and we were just talking about how much the sport had grown to this point, and we sat back and we go, listen, what would be some really cool, interesting business ideas? And he mentioned to me he thought it'd be funny if fans or someone came up with the plastic cauliflower ears for fans to wear at the fights. And I always thought that was I thought that was retarded, but it was pretty funny. And then I'd been a fan of Pride for so long. In Japan, they used to have these really sort of almost very super cartoony collectibles of guys from Pride. It was made by a company called How. And I thought it was really, really cool. And I sort of sat back and listened. What happened if someone made collectible figurines of guys in MMA? And we both sat back and go, hey, that's not a bad idea. And we just sort of literally started from there. He was actually the first license I ever signed.
Wow, that's awesome. Man, that is really, really cool. Hey, a quick question on the whole subject of Pride. Do you miss that?
I think they're going to be doing the best of Pride on Spike TV starting this this fall or just right after Christmas. So hopefully a lot of fans still get to see it. Do I miss it? Definitely. I think, I got asked this question a lot of times, and I guess a lot of the hardcore purists always said that they miss Pride so much. But for me, I think Pride was great because of that tournament format. The best shows I used to watch were obviously the big Grand Prix events that they used to have, and the entrances are really great. But in all honesty, from a pure fan point of view, I sort of like the UFC more now, but for different reasons, because you always had the separation of talent. The great thing about Pride is I used to get all these guys internationally competing, and it seemed like it was the best talent in the world. But now you're getting all the guys from Pride coming over to UFC and competing. You're sort of getting all those dream matchups too as well. So I think at the same token, I'm a bit nostalgic when you talk about Pride. I think the format is a little bit better. And I always questioned the judging that was happening in Pride. You never really quite understood why things were getting matched up the way they were. And sometimes I felt things were set up a little bit, but you definitely appreciate the show when it came to Pride.
Right. Now, you were talking about the best of Pride on Spike TV. Just before I get to the next question, I just wanted to comment or maybe ask you, what do you think maybe the Vegas odds would be right now of Fedor being included in that Spike TV best of Pride?
Probably pretty crap. They probably wouldn't be doing too well on that one.
Just wondering. Now, how has the feedback been on your merchandise so far?
This really started off as with a fun business with me and my brother. We're diehard fans. We thought it'd be cool to create product that, to be honest, being a fan of the sport a few years ago, other than buying a signature T-shirt, there really wasn't anything you can do to show yourself being a fan. So, me and my brother Baron, we were sort of pioneering this whole thing. It started off from a side business to now being in 3,500 stores across North America.
Wow.
We are in Toys R Us, we're in Kmart, we're in Walmart, we're in Japan, Germany, Ireland, Brazil, France. So the business has definitely fully exploded beyond our wildest expectations. But more than anything, we've had the opportunity to do something cool now. And now, obviously, we're working with the UFC now too as well.
You said that you just you're working with some UFC talent now. That has to do with the deal with Jax. Am I correct? And if so, can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, I've always been working with talent in the UFC. If you even know, the first group of guys that I actually signed on licenses were Matthews, Tito Ortiz, Quentin Jackson, and Randy. So I've always been working with guys within the UFC, but more specifically now, we're actually working with the organization UFC. So we're now going to be creating UFC licensed product from now on. So we're an official UFC licensor. I had the chance to work and meet many times with Lorenzo and Dana and those guys, and it's a pretty cool opportunity.
How's the deal with Jax working out though? Is that just from what I've understood, and I've kind of tried to read some things up on this? It's more so you guys are just sharing different fighters that they have with their base. Is that kind of how it's going down?
It's going to be a lot more intricate than that. What's essentially happening is that all three organizations have partnered together. So we are actually going to be sharing the UFC brand overall. So UFC branding will basically be able to be of use to all the products from now on end. We'll also be doing shared talent. So just like before, I had guys like Vanderlei Silva, Quentin Jackson, Randy, who are signed on specifically and exclusively to my program, are now sort of open up to basically all the companies to work together. So I have the opportunity to make BJ Penn and Chuck Liddell, and they have the opportunity to make Randy Couture and Vanderlei Silva. And more importantly, I think all the all the organizations are working together. We're working together in distribution, working together in marketing. So it's actually a lot more in tune with each other more than most people think. But I think more importantly, it allows us to create more cool products for the fans. It eliminates any chance of having a fragmented marketplace, and like many people say, the whole is it's greater than the sum of its parts.
Right. Who are the most popular collectibles at this point?
Well, I think when you talk about popularity, the interesting thing about doing what we do is that the process for us to create a collectible is not a short amount of time. Like, it's usually anywhere between 6 months to a year to create something and finally have it launched out and available in the market. So from the time that you go, hey, listen, I want to do this guy, it can really take you six months to a year to get it out into the market. So,
Wow.
The same game that most fans or even fight promoters are playing by trying to pick the right guys who are going to be peaking at the right moments and getting their shots at championships and being in the limelight. In the collectible industry, we play that same game too as well. So at this, when I watch fights, I'm watching it almost like an analyst, where I think, hey, I think this guy is going to be, have a chance to win. I think he's going to get a shot at the title, or I think this champion is not going to lose for a very long time. So maybe we should put a lot of driving force behind him. But what we've been finding with the whole collectible series is the fact is that it's truly collectible, meaning the fact that everyone sort of, we either win or lose. As long as you have the right characters and the right sort of guys, people want the whole collection. So although certain people may have some favorites, and you'll probably see sales surge or go down a little bit depending on at that time what's going on with that athlete. Is he the guy that's in the spotlight at that moment? Relatively, even so, it all balances out throughout the year.
How anatomically correct are they? Like, I know the UFC says, it's as real as it gets.
The funny thing enough is that we create the figures almost in a caricature style, but when you actually, if you came to our offices and understood the process and what it takes to create a figure, it would astound you, to be honest. Like, we literally are doing 3D face morphs of different pictures of the guys.
Wow.
So we're always doing all these different things and doing comparisons. We have to make sure that their eyebrows are exactly the same, their ears are exactly the same format. So as real as it gets, yeah, it gets pretty damn real.
That's tight. That's tight.
Who is your favorite fighter? Because I have that whole nostalgic thing with Pride, Vanderlei, who's a personal friend of mine, is one of my big favorites. And Vanderlei, and I'd obviously say Randy too as well, because I think both guys, I think the guy who, win or lose, you still love him,
right,
is really someone who's accomplished something in the sport. I think this sport, a lot of the fans sometimes are so easy to sort of jump onto one wagon or jump off another. And I think, Randy and Vanderlei have both had fans and accomplished enough in this sport where they've had these rabid followings that whether they lose or win, they always kind of win in their own way. You take a look at Vanderlei, who lost his last fight to Rich, and you still can't deny the fact that you loved watching that fight, and you got to see a classic Vanderlei fight where he just sort of grinded it out and just went for it. So, I think those two guys are definitely my favorites of all time.
This is a question that everyone gets asked, and I know you're probably, as soon as I say this, the sweat's going to drop right off your brow. Who is the best pound-for-pound fighter in your opinion?
The best pound-for-pound fighter, in my opinion. In all honesty, I think a lot of people use the word pound-for-pound too lightly.
Right.
Because, again, the whole concept of pound-for-pound. So literally, I'd probably say Anderson Silva would be at least up there right now. I know that the UFC markets him a lot as the best pound for pound fighter. But to be honest, you've never really seen anyone dominate a division like him. And the only other person that you can take is Fedor. But taking into account the weight difference and the type of guys that they fight and things of that sort, I'd still say Anderson is pretty high up there. I think Fedor really needs to. I'd love to see him come back over to the UFC, or wait if he decides to stay in Strikeforce. But if Fedor was a 185-pound guy, would he beat Anderson Silva? Who knows? But if Anderson Silva was a 230-pound guy, it's hard to say, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Now I know you said. I guess I have two questions here. You said Randy's. You're real close friends with him, so I wouldn't really want to ask how Randy would do in a fight, because maybe you don't want to get into that. I'm not sure. But now, what if the Randy Couture collectible fought the Antonio Nogueira collectible? Which collectible would win, and by how? And then the other question I have is, regarding UFC 101, we're talking about stocks going down. We're talking about pound for pound. Have you already done the Forrest Griffin collectible? And do you think that what happened on Saturday would affect the sales of the Forrest Griffin collectible?
Well, in regards to the collectible war that you speak of, I have no idea who would win, bud. You would have to tell me who would win on that one. But I think it'd be a good fight. That's how you want to put it. In regards to the Forrest Griffin question, one thing, that's a pretty good question, and the best answer I can give would be this. I was actually at Kmart 2 weeks ago out in Chicago, and I was talking to the lead buyer there, and he was saying to me, he goes, Damon, wouldn't this be the single scenario where the guy who is the biggest champion is the best seller? And I said to him, and he goes, these champions, they don't swap too often. You have this Anderson Silva guy who's been champion for a few years, and and I said to him, I go, do you know what's the interesting thing about the sport? And he goes, what? I go, the interesting thing about the sport is that the fact that it's real. And when you watch a guy like Forrest Griffin sort of walk his way up through the sport, and you go ride on all these highs and lows with him, that's what makes this sport have real fans. When you look at, say, for example, something like boxing, let's just take boxing for instance. You have these guys who they beat a whole bunch of nobodies to create this great record. Then they start doing all these really great fights. But nowadays, if you sit back and you go, listen, I love Floyd Mayweather because he did this. But the thing is, unless you ride the highs and lows with these guys, that's when you have real fans. I think that's when people are really sort of connected to the sport. So, even though Forrest lost in the way he did, I think it sucks. But I think the ride back up is really sort of the exciting part. And I think that's what's made Randy's career so exciting, is that he went high and low over and over again. It's the whole Rocky story.
Right.
Everyone likes the guy who wins all the time, but more importantly, everyone is in love with the guy so you get to sort of have that whole experience with him.
Right.
You were at the UFC Fan Expo, right?
To be honest, I was completely amazed. Going into that event, we knew it would be something very, very successful. I actually had dinner with Lorenzo the night before the expo launched, and we're sitting back and we're talking about the show, and we're like, listen, we're amazed at how crazy this thing's going to be. The second that they opened the doors on Friday morning to let people into the expo, literally people were running down the aisles. So they're running down the full sprint, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people were running full sprint to get in the lines, to get their autograph signed, to get their limited edition figurines. There's just people were crazy there. So the show was completely packed. We couldn't have asked for a better event, and to be honest, the second that there's another UFC Fan Expo, we're going to be there for sure, because I think from the business perspective, all the fans were there, all the celebrities were there, and more importantly, all the companies are there. So it even sort of turned into a semi-trade show where a lot of the people who you normally do business with or other companies were all going to be there anyway. So it was an amazing event.
That sounds amazing. Head near the wrap-up time. I know you've been very gracious with your time. We definitely appreciate it. I guess the two things would be who have been like who have been some of your favorite fighters to work with throughout this time, and also where can people purchase the collectibles?
Wow, who's been good to work with? Everyone I think is good to work with for different reasons, depending on what you're doing. Like I've been on PR tours, like me and Gina did a PR tour up here in Toronto, I believe like a month or 2 months ago, and she's an awesome girl. Me and her have been friends for a while, and we went to TSN and went to Sportsnet, and went to all those TV stations up here in Canada. I think I spent a lot of time with these different guys, and I think everyone is good in their own sort of way. I think some guys are better talking about certain experiences, and other guys are great about talking about products. So I really have no complaints on who's better and who is better to work with. But what was the second question, sorry?
Where can where can anybody purchase the collectibles?
Oh, right now, if you're in Canada, they're available at Toys R Us and Walmart. And in the States, they're available in Toys R Us too as well. And starting right after Christmas, they'll be available in Kmart too as well, and probably Walmart USA by next fall.
We definitely appreciate your time. I know Carson and me both, we're looking forward to talking to you and seeing how you felt on some different issues with the MMA scene and even, with some of the collectibles. I can't speak for Carson. I know he's got to feel the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely appreciate the time. Yep. You've had a lot of good stuff to say. Is there a website that I can go to? Like, let's say I'm somewhere, I'm not near Kmart. Is there somewhere I can go? And is there anything you want to say to, to all the people? I don't know if they're fans, but maybe fans of the collectibles, fans of the sport in general, anything you'd like to say, and also the website.
Well, yeah, obviously, you can find them, to be honest. Those are just some of the major chains I named out. There's regional chains across the United States and Canada that you can go to. But, yeah, check out basically your general stores. You can go to round5mma.com and purchase them there. There's a ton of online stores. I'm sure you can find them at too as well. More importantly, yeah, I have to say thank you to the fans. I met so many fans out in UFC Fan Expo, and actually we get tons of fan mail all the time, sent to our office, sent via email, but actually from people and what they want. And I think that's totally cool, because we sort of started this whole company for the purpose of creating stuff because we were fans. Now that we have people telling us what they want, that's actually totally the direction that we want to go. When we actually head into our weekly meetings, we have weekly meetings with the product development department, marketing guys, stuff like that. And the funny thing is, the product development department will bring research from emails that we get from fans, or they'll be on Sherdog and literally go, hey, listen, this guy here made a pretty good comment. Maybe we should do what this guy's talking about. So I think the only thing I can say is thank you to fans for the support. I think, keep doing what you're doing, and the more that you can tell us, the better direction we can go to create some cool products.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the interview and your time. And Chase?
Yeah, thank you, Damon. We appreciate you having you on, and hopefully we can have you on again, maybe after some, more big updates happen with Round 5, and maybe even get you on after an event and get your thoughts.
Yeah, sure, no problem, dude. Anytime.
Okay, thank you again, and we'll talk to you later.